Hi everyone, this is Jennifer Timko with Stampin' on the Fly, and I'm going to show you how I use this Snow Globe Scenes stamp set that is part of the holiday release from Newton's Nook Design to create a snow globe shaker card. So I picked a couple of the images from the stamp set, and truly I think that's the hardest part, is picking those. But I picked the little houses, I picked the Santa, and I picked a tree, which I ended up not using, but I'm inking it up nonetheless because I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to build this scene. And I'm inking it up using my Misty and Versamark ink. And you'll see that I'm going to stamp it twice with Versamark because I can't exactly see if I had good coverage. So I'm going to just stamp it twice to make sure, because I'm going to heat emboss this using silver embossing powder. So after I get this stamped, I'm going to pull out my embossing powder. The one I'm using today is a Stampin' Up! Silver. And I'm going to work on getting just good coverage on it, and I'm just going to heat emboss it, and I know you guys know how to do this. But there is something awfully satisfying about watching this happen. I always call it the magic of embossing. It really is so cool. I never get tired of it. We're going to bring my heat tool in. I tend to heat both the front and the back. That helps me keep the paper from bending a little bit too much. And I think it makes for a cleaner embossing for me personally. I love that little Santa. And of course, it's fantastic that there's the coordinating dies that go with it. So once I get this heat embossed, I am going to use the dies from the Snow Globe Scenes coordinating die set, and I'm going to go ahead and pop these through my Big Shot and cut them out. And you can start to see the beginning of my little scene that I'm creating for my snow globe shaker. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some sponging on a background, and I will tell you it's a little bit sloppy on the sponging, but I was in a hurry and I knew that only small parts of it were going to really be seen once I was done. So I'm using my Tim Holtz Distress ink, and this is still the Thick Whisper white paper from Stampin' Up!, which is what I embossed on. I will say it is not the optimum paper for this kind of sponging, but it does the job here, and I wasn't too worried about the edges of it. So I just start with the lightest of the colors. I come from underneath and kind of swirl it up, and as you can see, when I move along, I get a little sloppier as I come from the top, but again, I know what the boundaries are on it. So I'm not too worried. I'm using my die to kind of figure out exactly where I'm going to cut there. So I'm not too worried about the other edges there that are so sloppy. And once I get this all sponged on, I'm going to go back and use that die to cut out the back side of my snow globe shaker. And you can see that I have most of the bad parts cut out there. And I'm going to sprinkle this with just a little bit of water to get that night sky kind of effect that you always like when you use your distress inks. So after I did that, I'm going to show you a little bit of how I build my scene. Obviously, I have my houses that I embossed, and using that big background part of the shaker, I used the die from the houses and I ran it through my Big Shot, and I used this negative piece here and just trimmed the rest of it with my scissors so that I could get the bottom layer, which looks more like the snow, and it gives just, even though I'm going to put it down flat, it gives a little bit more of a raised look instead of just being so flat. If you prefer, you could just not ink the bottom of your background, and that would be perfect as well. But I'm not as good on the precision on the inking there, so it was easier for me just to cut another little piece here for my snow. And I'm just attaching this with just regular old glue and making those flat to the back of my shaker. So once I have these attached, I'm going to go ahead and start figuring out where I want to put Santa in this scene. And in doing so, I'm going to use the next part of my shaker, which is the part I cut out of the new foam that comes in little packs from Newton's Nook. This is a nice thick foam. It has double-sided adhesive that you just have to pull off the backing. So it's awesome because you can just pull off the backing when you need it. So for right now, I just cut out the foam. You can see right here, and I had cut out both the shaker part and the base out of the foam. And I'm just putting this piece, and right now the adhesive backing is still on, so I can use this to help judge where I want to put my Santa. And then behind the Santa, I'm using these little mini dimensionals. These are newer from Stampin' Up, and I have to say that I have an unusual obsession with them. They're the perfect size for so many of these little die cut pieces when you want them raised, and you don't have to cut your little foam pieces up. These little mini dimensionals are awesome. So I'm going to use those to attach my Santa, and then I can start building the actual shaker. Before I attach this, I'm going to use my anti-static tool just to help de-stickify, is that a word? De-stickify the inside of the foam, just so that the sequins don't have a tendency to stick to it. I've had problems with that on shakers. I'm sure you have too. And so adding a little bit of your anti-static powder there seems to solve that problem. So I'm just going to pull off the backing here, and you can see how easy that happens. And I'm going to put the foam down on top of my scene. I think that this way for me is easier on building the shaker, so that I can make sure when I do put my sequins in there, they stay kind of contained in the right spot as I build my layers. So once I have that, I'm going to pull out now. Next up, I'm going to put in some of my sequins. And the sequins I'm using today are actually from the Stampin' Up! Metallics bunch of sequins. They have a number of different colors, but I went ahead and pulled out 2 different sizes of silver, and I like that they're a little bit smaller than some of the other sequins I had on hand. So these little tiny ones and a medium-sized sequin, and they're perfect for the scale of this little snow globe. And I thought the silver was really pretty. It kind of worked with the silver embossing and the blue background. And then once I get all my sequins in, I'm going to pull out my acetate. So the acetate sheets are also coming as part of a pack from Newton's Nook this week. And they have this film on both sides, so you can see I kind of peeled back the film when I cut it with my Big Shot, and then I left the film so that I could peel it back in place and keep it protected when I store it back for the next cut. So that's what I did there. So you do want to pull that film away from both sides before you cut using your Big Shot. And then now I'm just going to put the acetate sheet on the next layer. And again, all the sticky stuff is already there on the foam. So boy, this makes it simple. And then now my shaker part is complete. And because the adhesive is all over that foam, you don't have to worry about any of your sequins escaping. And then finally I have just a layer cut back out of the white paper to put on top. And so all I'm going to do is add my adhesive to the back of that and attach it. And since I'm pretty liberal on the adhesive on this, I do go kind of around it with my fingers to make sure there's no adhesive sticking out before I attach it on. And that's all it really takes to build the shaker part. And the rest of it's just putting the card together. So these are so fun. And again, it's one of those that if you do this in a big assembly line, this would be super fun. And there is something about a shaker card. Nobody can resist them. Everybody loves them. You can't stop shaking them. Nobody can. I shake them all the time when I'm showing them off. And so here's the finished product. And again, I use that base. I just cut that out of a silver foil and attached the foam on the back of that. The sentiment comes from that Snow Globe Scenes stamp set, and I just heat embossed it using the same silver embossing powder that I did on the images. You can see all the possibilities with these cute images in the stamp set. I'm really glad you joined me with this today. I hope you are enjoying this release. I hope you enjoy this card, and I'd love to see you again soon. Have a great day.